and they came back to his father, and they made his father think that he had been killed by a wild animal. And the wild animal referred to the wife of Potiphar. She was like an animal. She wanted to seduce him the whole time. For 12 years, she kept coming to him when he was in jail. Not only she put him in jail, she kept coming to him and saying, be with me. You'll be free. You'll be out. Why did she do that? Because she knew from her astrologers that she was going to have children with him. But the astrologers see, but they don't know what they see. It wasn't her, it was her daughter. Anybody ever see the movie The Graduate? 30, 40 years ago with Dustin Hoffman. That's what it's about. It's about a young graduate who gets seduced by some lady, and he ends up marrying her daughter. Very interesting. I think that's the house. Anyway, so that's why. That's the message. That was the last. And ironically, that's what happened to Yosef. There's a story that when Yaakov sent Yosef, when they read that portion in the Torah about Yaakov sending Yosef. By the way, it says he sent him from the depths, from the valley of Hebron. And Rashi in the Chaz quotes the sages saying there, Hebron is not a valley, it's a hillside, it's a mountain. So what do you mean? What does it mean from the valley of Hebron? So the sages say it wasn't a valley, it was a deep concept that Hashem was setting in motion that was going to bring the Jewish people down to Egypt so that they would, after slavery, they would go out to receive the Torah. That was the whole goal. But it had to be arranged, and it required time for 70 people to become 6 million. It's a very complicated story. And so Yosef, and so this was the last thing they learned. And then he never saw his father again for 22 more years. The Shrine. And he was all alone in Egypt with this woman after him. Oh boy, what a story. What a story. Only Yabesha could make such a story. And so when he saw the wagons, the agalot reminded him of the Egla Arufa. And not just that it was appropriate, because that's what happened to him, it was the last thing they had learned. The Rebbe said, just a sikh on this, he says, that's what it means to learn. Thank you so much. To really learn, when you really learn something, you never forget it. Even after 22 years, it's still fresh, so fresh in your mind. 22 years from now, you're going to teach Tanya to your grandchildren. And you're going to remember what you learned in Tanya 101, in Mechon Yadus. That's the lesson. So that's what it means about the wagons that Yosef sent, and that's why Yaakov's spirit, he'd been grieving. It's so sad. He had been grieving for 22 years, and he couldn't calm down. It says Yitzchak knew that Yosef was alive. So why didn't he tell Yaakov? Because the brothers, there were 9 brothers, and they made a vow together, a minyan. What was the minyan? They made Hashem part of the minyan. That nobody is allowed to reveal this terrible crime until the time is ready. Wow. So Yitzchak knew that Yosef was alive, and he couldn't tell his own son, his beloved son Yaakov. It is such a deep story. So when Yaakov sees from the wagons this code message that Yosef is still alive, it says his spirit was revived. And so he comes down to Egypt, and the Jewish people become a nation, and the history is still unfolding. We're part of that. We are all part of that history. The second, so these two Dvar Torahs, the second one is about Yaakov and Yehuda. They were both kings. Now think of it. This is such an amazing, this is our story. This is our family. This is our people. This is who we are. You understand? This is not just a subject. This is our essence. They were kings. There were two sisters, Rachel and Leah. The firstborn of Rachel was Yosef. Not the firstborn of Leah. The firstborn of Leah was Reuven, but Reuven blew it. He lost his cool because he was jealous for his mother, because it was such a difficult situation that his mother, Leah, was rejected. He loved her. She was his mother. But she had to sleep alone, except for designated nights. And Yaakov's main tent was with her twin sister, Rachel, because he loved Rachel. He entered the family because he loved Rachel. And he was tricked into marrying Leah. And because he was a mensch, he didn't make a scandal about it and throw her out and embarrass her for the rest of her life. He tried to make the best of it. And he shared the secret signs so that Laban wouldn't trick him. Why did he do that? So that Leah wouldn't be embarrassed and humiliated in front of the whole. There's a huge oilam came, it was the wedding of the day of the year. Laban was a rich man, but he was a crook. We have to remember that too. He's our Zayda. Laban is our Zayda, and he's a crook of crooks. And he said, because of him, this whole thing got set up like that. So Reuben was so upset day after day, seeing his mother scorned. Mother had a broken heart. Mamish, a broken heart. And because she had a broken heart, she merited to have most of the Jewish people as her grandmother, her biological grandmother, because she had, 8 of the 10 tribes are from her. And then Benjamin and Yosef, Yosef divided into 2, so 7 of the tribes are from her. So she merited to have children. And Rachel suffered that she was brought barren. Such a story. Such Such passions. But they both. So Reuben blew the kingship because he protested in thought. It was just a thought he had. He didn't do anything. The Torah says he took the bed of his mother, Leah, and he moved it into the tent of Yaakov. He didn't really do it. He just thought of doing it. And because he thought of doing it, it was counted to him as if he did it. And therefore, since he questioned the decision of the Rebbe, because Yaakov was the Rebbe, Yaakov didn't do anything that Hashem didn't tell him to do. So he blew the right to be the leader of the Jewish people, the firstborn. He was firstborn. And next week we're going to read how Yaakov criticizes him and says, you ran like water to do what your heart told you. How did you? And because you did that, you lose the leadership of the Jewish people. And Yehuda, who should have lost the leadership of the Jewish people, because it was Yehuda's idea not to kill Yosef, but to sell him instead. So he rescued him from death, from being killed, but he sold him into Egypt. So in the end, it was all Bashir, and Yosef became the ruler of the whole world. And he fed the whole world was starving. He fed everybody for 2 years. 2 years. It would have been for more, but Yaakov came. When Yaakov came, he brought a blessing, and he blessed Pharaoh. What was his blessing? That when you, Pharaoh, come to the Nile River, it's going to rise up to greet you. This was something that happened to the Avos. We see it happened to Abraham, it happened to Yitzchak, it happened to Yaakov. When they would come to the well, the water would rise up. It happened to Rivka. When Rivka came to the well, the water rose up to greet her. So every time the water rose up for Pharaoh, the canals in Egypt flooded, and so they had wheat. And the famine ended. And that's why it was only 2 years and not 7 years of famine. So then Yosef is in a position that he's in total control of the whole of Egypt. He's now the ruler of Egypt. Pharaoh takes him as his right-hand man. He is his guy, his man. And the brothers have to come to him and beg for food. And he throws them in prison so that they should taste what he went through, a little bit to taste it. And he gives them such many problems that they look into their hearts. And they remember 22 years ago, they did terrible crime. They sold their brother into slavery, which is a death penalty for doing such a terrible thing. And so Yosef, who wants to be reunited with his real family, his brother, his complete brother, Benjamin, arranges they should bring Benjamin to Egypt, and he says, I'm going to keep him now as my slave. He frames him. He puts his goblet in his sack with the food. And what are they going to do about it? If they're going to do nothing about it, Yosef will keep Benjamin, and he'll let them all go on their own way. And he'll arrange some other way to be united with his father. No, Yehuda passes the test. It was all a test. And Yehuda passes a test, and he rises up with Mamash Mesiras Nefesh to fight a battle with Yosef. And here are these two kings, from Rachel and from Leah, the leaders of the family. Each one became a king. And from Yehuda comes great leaders. And Yehuda's leadership was displayed when he rose up with self-sacrifice, because, listen, Yosef had an army there. He was in control, and they could kill him. And they were ready to kill him. And Yehuda was ready to kill them. But he was not going to let Benjamin remain in Egypt, because he swore if he didn't bring Benjamin home, he would have no part in the world to come or in the hereafter. So his entire life was at stake. And that's why he became the king of the Jewish people ultimately. And kings come from him. The great leaders of the Jewish people, Rabbi Yehuda Anasi, who wrote the Mishnah, like we've been learning about the Mishnah. The Rambam comes from him. The Maharal Prague comes from him. The Alter Rebbe comes from him. Moshiach comes from him. So is this our story, or is this a story? This is our story. This is who we are. This is who we are. This is where we come from. Okay, chapter 20. Thank you very much for helping me with this. This will all go to great use. Bezras Hashem. Lam Natsei Al Mizmor David. Last week I couldn't do it. The schedule was too tight. Last week we had a bris. We didn't get back early enough to prepare all this stuff because the bris was on Thursday. And we had to come back. retrieve our luggage and everything, shop and make Shabbos. There was no time. People say, what happened? What happened? Okay. Yancha Adonai b'yimtzah yisagev Hashem Elohei Yankev Yishlach Esacha Mekaydesh. Hashem should send help from his holy chamber. Umitziyin, and from Jerusalem, Yisadeka should send support. Yizker kol minchaisecha, should recall all your offerings. V'yilasach hayadash nesela. Iten d'chachiv avecha v'chalatzasacha yamole. V'ranana b'shuvasecha u'v'shem Eloheinu nidgel. Yamale Adonai kol mishalesecha. Ata yadaiti ki heishi Adonai Mashiach. Yanehu mishmeit kodshei. B'gevures yesh yaminei ele rechav v'lezusim v'anachnu b'shem Adonai Eloheinu naskir. Hem akaru v'nafalu v'anachnu kamu v'neseidad. Adonai Yishir HaMelech Yaneinu v'yem kareinu. Tanya, where's the Tanya? There's the Tanya. Chapter 5. Which is greater? The debate between which is greater, Torah or mitzvahs, is very similar to the source of the spiritual debate between Yosef and Yaakov. Because there are two and between the first base of Mikdash and the second base of Mikdash. The first base of Mikdash really was the Mishkan. The Mishkan was built according to the order of nature. The lowest level was the earth. On top of the earth was vegetable, the wooden beams, the walls. On top of that was animal, the skins. On top of that was the people, the priests. So that follows the order of creation, from low to high, or high to low. But it was destroyed. It stood for almost 400 years. It stood for 40 years, and then like another 360 years, like 400 years. We had the Mishkan, and all the holy service was being done there. That was later done in the Beis Hamikdash. It was destroyed eventually by Philistine, and then it was replaced after the time of by David HaMelech, because the Luches were captured by the Plishtim. They were returned by David HaMelech, and David HaMelech devoted himself to rebuilding the Mishkan in the permanent form of stone. No wood is allowed in the Beis Hamikdash. In other words, the Mishkan recognized the hierarchy of levels of creation. The Beis Hamikdash is entirely of stone, recognizing the essence of Hashem, the infinite essence of Hashem. That is the foundation of everything, but it's stone. And that's Yehuda. That's symbolized by Yehuda. So similarly, which is greater? Torah learning, which goes by levels, depending on your IQ and how much you learned and how much you've covered and so on. Or the Beis Hamikdash itself, which was built by David HaMelech, which comes from Yehuda. That's just my suggestion. But the Alter Rebbe writes about the two Batei Mikdashes the way I just described it to you. If it corresponds to Yaakov and Yehuda, it seems to me to make sense that it would. But I never saw it, so I can't verify or corroborate the details. These patterns are really immense patterns within everything. All right, chapter 5. We're now dealing with which is greater, Torah or mitzvahs. Learning Torah or doing mitzvahs. We say the conclusion, I'm going to jump to the end, is the conclusion in the Talmud is that mitzvahs are greater. Why? Because when you do a mitzvah, you are one, your whole being is one thing with God. You're enveloped. You're totally enveloped. Not just your mind is enveloped in it, but you are totally enveloped in the mitzvah. You become the mitzvah. Again, I love repeating this phrase. You cannot tell the dancer from the dance. You become completely unified with Hashem. Whereas Torah is limited according to your IQ. So mitzvahs are definitely greater. But the conclusion, according to Rabbi Akiva, who was himself devoted to Torah, you know the story of Rabbi Akiva, right? He was an ignoramus. He was an uneducated person. He hated the rabbis. And but he had a lot of potential. He was a shepherd. He was a brilliant shepherd. He made his boss very wealthy. But his boss had a daughter, and she fell in love with him. She admired him. She saw his potential, and she wanted him to learn Torah. So after they got married, she sent him away to learn in yeshiva. He learned for 12 years, didn't come back. And after 12 years, he came back. And as he came to the house, there was some woman inside, and she was yelling at his wife. His name was Rachel. What kind of husband you got? He goes away for 12 years and leaves you all alone. No support, nothing. How did she survive? And she had children to raise. He didn't leave till she had children. And he hears her yelling, and his wife says, "You're criticizing me because I sent him away because I bless him for staying away and learning Torah for 12 years. And if I had my way, he could learn for another 12 years. He didn't go in and say hello. He turned around and went straight back." And they said, "Why didn't he come in and say hello?" And the answer is because learning 12 years and then learning another 12 years is not the same as learning 24 years straight. And when he came back, he had 1,000 Talmidim following him for every year that he had been away, 24,000 students. So Rabbi Akiva, who was so devoted to Torah, we owe the whole Torah to Rabbi Akiva, because when the Romans killed all the sages, they knew and they understood, like the communists understood, if you can prevent the Jews from learning Torah, they're finished. And that's what the Romans set about trying to do. And Rabbi Yehuda Anasi saved the Jewish people by ensuring, getting a guarantee from the Romans that they would set up at least an alternative place where Torah could be learned, and that was in Yavna. And they kept the knowledge of Torah alive. They kept the oral Torah alive. Otherwise, it was gone. And in our own time, the Friediger Rebbe is the one. He kept Torah alive when the communists tried to destroy it, totally destroy it. And we see the effect. Go to Sheepshead Bay or go to any of these communities where there are many people who came to America from a Russian or Ukrainian background. They know nothing, or even an Israeli background. You know, the Israelis know less than American Reform Jews. They know nothing. They're brought up in Israel in total ignorance. Why? Because there's the Russian attitude of the founders of the state of Israel, who are totally opposed to Jewish education. So we are survivors of this. So Rabbi Akiva was the greatest survivor of the Roman domination, and he and 5 students reestablished the knowledge of Torah. But they passed it down because of his wife Rachel, who sent him back for 24 years. Okay, so this is the debate. What is greater, Torah or mitzvahs? And so Rabbi Akiva articulates the conclusion that mitzvahs are greater, but Torah is greater because without Torah we can't do mitzvahs. Gadol Torah shemevi lidi ma'aseh, it says. Great is Torah because Torah leads people to do mitzvahs. Okay, page 95 at the top. This is the distinctive, infinitely great and wonderful superiority of mitzvahs, of the mitzvah of knowing and understanding Torah. What is that superiority? That when your mind grasps, and understands, like the goldfish in the bowl, a Torah idea, and your mind is in the idea also. The idea is in your mind, and you are in the idea. There's a unity, like two drops of water. They don't, it's like oil and water in the same test tube will never mix. But two drops of water on the table touching, you have some water on the table. It's one thing. So the Torah becomes one thing with your mind, whereas when you're doing a mitzvah, it's you doing the mitzvah, two separate things. It's a unity, but it's not the same unity as the unity of knowing Torah. So that's a superiority of knowing Torah over all the mitzvahs involving action. And what about speech? In speech, that's more an internal thing, right? But knowing Torah is superior even to learning Torah through speech, speaking it over. And it's a well-known fact, girls, that when in the yeshiva system, people learn together. So it's very noisy. But you learn better when you're screaming. Because you're putting koyach into it. Rabbi Meir, the famous Rabbi Meir, had a wife named Beruria. Beruria was a Torah scholar. She was brilliant. Her father was one of the great sages, one of the 10 people who were killed that we read about on Yom Kippur, who took the place of the 10 sons who sold Yosef. That's the difference. I can't tell you that story now. She was so brilliant, the sages used to run away from her because she used to slug them up. She used to, you know what that means, to slug up? To repudiate their teachings. She used to show them, she would point out their mistakes. So she said, if a person is learning Torah and he's not learning with all 248 limbs, then he's not going to remember it. When you learn Torah, you have to learn it with your whole being. And then you'll always remember. Then you'll remember it. It's true. So she's the one who taught it to us. Maybe you girls will all become brewers in your time. Don't think it's not possible. It is. The Rebbe encouraged women. There's a video we see here of a person who was living in the upstate New York, upstate New York City, right? What's it called up there? I don't know. Beyond the Bronx, what? Oh. Up there. So he was a shul. He was teaching a shul, and he came to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe said, "What's your wife doing?" What about your wife? She said, "Well, she keeps the house." The Rebbe said, "No. She's a very smart lady. She has to teach. She should organize a class of other ladies." And because she said, I can't teach a class. I don't know. So the Rebbe said, "You'll learn. Learn with your husband." And then the class built and got bigger and bigger and bigger. And she became a real big teacher of Torah. Okay, so maybe each one of you remember. Okay, because through all the mitzvahs performed in action and speech, Hashem clothes the soul and envelops it with his light. So there's a light from God that shines upon you when you learn Torah, like we just described, with all your faculties, and it fills all and surrounds all the 10 aspects of your neshama. Then you are surrounded with a godly light from head to foot. And if you look at the videos of the Rebbe, you'll see Torah in action. The Rebbe is a physical embodiment of the complete Torah. I heard a story about the Rebbe just yesterday, that when the Rebbe was a student in Berlin, apparently there's a tremendous library of rare Jewish books in Berlin, and the Rebbe was holishing to be able to gain access to this library. He wanted to see the books. But to get access to this library, you had to have a note of approval from the chief rabbi of the city, who was a brilliant, brilliant genius, Torah genius. So the Rebbe went to him and he said, I would like to have permission to go to the library. He said, to go to the library, you have to pass a test. The Rebbe said, I don't have time for this. He said, well, that's it. The Rebbe said, well, why don't you test me this way? Give me any book in your library, any book you own. Let me keep it overnight, and tomorrow you can test me in the book. Tomorrow. He had written a book on a very, very abstruse topic about what do you do about the bones of somebody who's perished and how they should be treated and so on. Very scholarly, complicated book. The Rebbe took the book, he came back the next day. He knew the book by heart, word perfect. The rabbi was amazed. You don't need my, he said, you don't need my smicha. That's superiority of Torah. The Rebbe combines both, you know. When you see the Rebbe, you see the completeness of Torah in action, because the Torah contains within the completeness of the whole Torah, written Torah, oral Torah. There's everything. He has complete recall, and there's nothing. Any book that came to his before him, he knows it. And he comes down and spends hours talking to children and reading our letters and answering our problems, and even anticipating them before we ask. He already sends his answer. L'chaim, l'chaim. How fortunate we are. Every one of you has a story. I'd love to know. I'd love to hear how Hashem arranged that every single one of you should end up here. It's not by accident. Don't think it's just something that happened. I must tell you one thing. Maybe you heard it already. On 6Teves, when the Rebbe came back from the oil on 6Teves, and we were dancing, and we danced till dawn. We never understood how much tension we had all been under this whole time, because Hashem was on trial. Hashem, not the Rebbe. Hashem was on trial. The Alter Rebbe was on trial. The Baal Shem Tov was on trial. Someone was coming. It was just like the Yavanim, the Greeks said, holiness. Learn your Torah. Enjoy it. But don't tell us it's God's Torah. The same thing, there was the same with Chabad. Don't tell me that the Rebbe is holy. He's a Jew, he's a smart Jew, like any other Jew. He has his portion in the Torah. I have my portion in the Torah. That was the whole fight. That was what 6Teves was about. The Rebbe came back, he said, this is an auspicious time, a special time from heaven. Everybody here, if you have something that you need, something that you want, materially or spiritually, write it down, give us your name and your mother's name. I will take them to the ohel of my father-in-law. So that's today. Yesterday was 6Teves. Today is the day. Take some time, write down what you want. I want to understand Torah. I want to get married. I want to have a family. I want my grandmother to be well. I want whatever you want. I want to understand Hasidus. I want to understand Jewish law. I want to understand Nigla. Whatever it is you want. I want to have a profession and to be a mother. Whatever. Now is the time. The doors are open. Don't let it slip through your fingers like water. But we did learn some Tanya today. So Rabbi Majeski was a great class. He won't fire me. He really wants me to go 3 times as fast. And it's very embarrassing when he reminds me. But it just seems to me, it would be a shame not to mention some of these things. Thank you very, very much for your help with folding the letters. Here. This for the dorm. That's one of the deliveries. And we'll put a few of them downstairs. Okay, should be enough. You give one to the secretary. What's her name? I always forget. No.
Shira Abrahamson.
What?
Shira Abrahamson.
Yeah. It's on the table. This is not, yeah, if he wants me, she'll read it. I'll kill Masha Barasala. Hey, hi, love him. If any of you girls would like to someday come on Shabbos by day, meet Mrs. Pape, just speak to me about it. I'm sure she'd be happy to meet you. I'm sure you got some nice books. Be sure to learn them. Have a wonderful Shabbos.
Like 5 copies. Sometimes I love that I never clean because that means I have food up here.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
My favorite. I'm good at it. It's such a power. I forgot that I'm in this class. I just feel like going there for a lot.
Exactly.
Ow.
Yeah, what?
I do that class. It's good, but like, I'm sorry to walk into the car. Yeah, it used to be my favorite thing. What is it?
Yeah.